Now it looks like there's a new kind of loan shark in town, the one that targets students who are drowning in student loan debt. RT's Anastasia Churkina joins me live now from our New York studio. She's got the details on how the job market isn't exactly acting as a lifeguard for many of these students. Hey there, Anastasia.
Hey Dina, you're absolutely right. The situation that students are faced with, basically drowning from the enormous amounts of debt they are left with after graduating from college, is certainly no joke. And especially if we consider these latest unemployment rate numbers that have just been released today, the unemployment rate in the United States being at 9.6%. This is the longest period of time, over a year, that the unemployment rate in the country has been over 9% in as much as 25 years. And this is definitely something that is being very much reflected on the students who are left stuck in a sort of vicious circle without jobs and with enormous debts. And that's what our report of the day is about. Take a look.
A ticking time bomb of American debt. This time, all this is owed by college students. $3,000 adding on every second.
If I keep going at the rate that I went the first year, by the time I'm finished, I will have about $120,000 worth of debt, just from school loans.
The most traditional financial baggage dragging behind for Americans has been credit card debt. For the first time, debt belonging to college students has taken over that #1 spot.
Students graduating in 2008, 2009, and 2010 are facing the worst job markets in a generation at least. And so you have people who have more debt than we've ever seen before and are having a harder time finding any job, let alone a job that pays them enough to somehow pay off all this debt.
29-year-old Shayna is haunted by major money problems. What she earns now is barely enough to survive on a day-to-day basis, let alone pay back for her education.
The money that comes from the internship is, like I said, very little and doesn't pay for much. It'll pay for maybe a dinner or two.
The connection between lack of a good enough, if any, job and growing debt has never been as tight for graduates. According to some reports, at certain American universities, students have been borrowing 70% more money in the last year.
The universities are actually cutting deals with the student loan companies and making money on the side. There's been a lawsuit in New York, $1 million fine against Columbia University for steering people to expensive loans. The danger here is that instead of capitalism, we end up with serfdom because these students are kind of indebted for life.
Dennis House lives in a basement in Queens with 2 roommates.
Your loan that you're paying back shouldn't cost as much as it costs you to live in a home. What they're doing is completely lowering the standard of living for an entire generation of people who couldn't help it in any way.
Just months after graduation, Dennis's relationship with his loan company is already abusive.
They're terrible. They're the biggest loan sharks, in the world right now. If you're late on a payment, they'll harass you.
This harassing can never go away. College debt owners cannot file for bankruptcy.
Your housing debt, your car debt, your credit card debt, if you go bankrupt, it gets wiped away. You literally cannot get out of your student debt. If you decide you can't pay it, too bad. Student loan debt's special, and it's especially sticky and hard to get rid of.
When your credit score falls, getting a job becomes even harder. Many companies check these numbers. Outside a major loan corporation, journalist Joe Weisenthal says youth is often pressured into taking on commitments it can't afford without even realizing it.
There's an incredible amount of propaganda regarding student loans and education in general, just in terms of people saying, how many times have you heard the phrase, education is the best investment you can make?
But unless a drastic turnaround in the system takes place, that statement may soon become obsolete.
Ever since an economic crisis began in the U.S., the debate of how it started and how to define what's happening now has been non-stop. In this turmoil, a generation that is supposed to be the driving force of the country got stuck, jobless and indebted. So what happens next if the future of those who have to run the future is this bleak? Anastasia Churkina, RT, New York.
So they tell you, go to college, get a higher education, you'll get a great job, be able to live the high life, but obviously not living the high life while you're paying off all those student loans. Anastasia, some people in light of this issue, are going so far as to say that higher education will be in the same state of despair as the car manufacturing industry here in the United States. I mean, where do we draw that line? Where do we say enough is enough?
Well, Dina, that's a wonderful question. You're absolutely right. Some analysts are saying that if things continue developing in the way, or not developing in the way that they have been in the last couple of years, the higher education system could in fact face something similar as the car manufacturing crash which we saw happen a little over a year ago. But, you know, the interesting point about that is that people feel that college education is, if you can afford it, is something so natural that how can it ever sort of disappear? How can it ever really become a big problem for a nation? But I'm sure many people were asking themselves and saying the same thing about the car manufacturing business. Who would have thought even 10 years ago that the state of affairs in car manufacturing would ever end up where they have, especially if we look at cities like Detroit in Michigan. So this is definitely something that, if it's not taken care of, could become a quite serious plague.
I don't know about you, but, you know, when I went to college, I just remember thinking, I believe that everyone deserves this experience, because it is a place where you truly, unlike high school, think outside the box. You get to meet people from all walks of life if you're lucky enough to perhaps go away for school. So how can people be okay with sort of not giving some people the opportunity to do that, to get an education, really become better citizens in their own society? I mean, doesn't it go full circle? Isn't society getting back what they put into that individual who decides to seek a higher education?
Absolutely, Dina. What we see happening already is that students who had that wonderful college experience, but because of the state of the economy, are unfortunately faced with these enormous debts, and they cannot find the jobs. They are stuck in a vicious circle because, as well as for the unemployment rate, if we look at the more general pictures, people are not putting money back into the economy, which ends up reflecting on, people are not buying, so businesses are in trouble. Because businesses are in trouble, they're not hiring more people, and it all sort of turns into a big vicious circle like that. And you're right that it's not okay for people to not be able to have that college experience, higher education, if that is what they see fit, if that is what they need, especially if it's something that is that has its reason as a flaw in a system.
And those dismal unemployment rates definitely not helping matters here. RT's Anastasia Churkina live there for us in New York City.